Okay, so here is what you can expect from this hour with us today. I'm going to briefly introduce us. I will talk a little bit about the DET. A lot of you who are on here, probably the vast majority already know what the DET is. So I'm going to focus on some recent updates that we have to the test and also some of my top tips for making sure you test your best. And then I will pass it over to Eve, who's going to talk a little bit about the University of Pennsylvania English language programs where she works. And she will also give you some of her best tips and tricks on both English language practice as well as the DET. And then we will have a Q&A. So if you have a question for us, please use that Q&A feature because it is hard for us to track everything in the chat while we're presenting. So if you have a question you want us to answer live at the end, please use that. We will try to get to as many as we possibly can. I will say just at the upfront, Eve is a language specialist. She works at UPenn ELP. She's not in the admissions office. So if you have admissions questions, those are best directed towards the admissions email for the University of Pennsylvania. And I can unfortunately not help you with your specific test, especially if it's a rules and requirements related question to a test that you've already taken. Please reach out to our support team. They would be happy to help you if they can. But without further ado, let's get this webinar started. So I'll just kick it off quickly. Again, my name's Caroline. I work at the Duolingo English Test and I work on the test taker team. So I do a lot of test taker relations as well as content for test takers like our test readiness materials. And I've recently started making videos on our YouTube channel, which is a lot of fun. I'm going to let Eve introduce herself briefly.
Yeah, thank you. Hi, my name is Eve. I'm a language specialist at the University of Pennsylvania, and a language specialist is just what we call an English language instructor. And so I'm really excited to be here with you and with DET because one of my areas of interest as a language teacher are tests. So I've always been interested in tests. And I love getting to learn more about DET. So thanks for having me.
Thanks, Eve, for coming. And you guys, is an awesome resource. She is one of my favorite people who doesn't work at Duolingo to ask questions about the Duolingo English Test. So we'll go ahead and kick it off with some information about the DET. Again, I will move kind of quickly through some of these slides since a lot of you already have this information. But if you do have a question, use that Q&A feature. So again, a lot of you know what the DET is. It is an online on-demand English proficiency test. And our mission is really important to us. We want to make higher education more accessible for all of you. So some of the main differences of the DET are that you can take it anywhere, anytime, no travel required, no appointment required, no in-person testing at all. It's fast. You finish the test in 1 hour and you will get your results in 2 days. You can share them instantly once you get a certified result. And it's affordable. So we have the single test is $49 US and there's no additional cost to send your results to institutions. One update I will give you guys is that we recently started offering a 2-test option that you can buy up front. So you'll have 2 chances to take the DET. This is a $78 option, so you save 20% on 2 tests. This is totally optional. I totally understand that not everybody is going to want to do this, but thought I would let you guys know about that since it is a recent update. And the DET is trusted. So we are accepted by thousands of top universities around the world. In many countries, and more are accepting every day. If you want to make sure that your institution is going to accept the DET, you can search it on englishtest.duolingo.com/institutions. And if you see this location tab here, you can filter by state, by country. You can also search by name or location and make sure you're looking at the proper level, so undergraduate or graduate program. Okay, we're going to get into the test flow now, which is what some people would call the test pattern. This is sort of how you're going to move through the test. Again, the overall process of taking the DET is that you need 1 hour of free time to take it. You'll receive your certified results in 2 days, and you can submit your results instantly to universities. Here is a breakdown of the actual test. So you're going to have a quick setup. You're going to move through a couple screens here that will remind you of things like rules and requirements. You're going to submit your ID here. So make sure you have a valid government issued ID that you can present at the beginning of the test. The adaptive portion of the test, which is the majority of the questions, takes about 45 minutes, and the writing and speaking sample takes about 10 minutes. Here's some of the things you're going to do in the setup. You're going to test your equipment, so make sure that your DET app is working, your speakers and microphone. You're going to take a photo of yourself and your ID and enter your personal info, and you're going to review all the test rules. I want to talk a little bit about what I meant when I said computer adaptive test. I think this is something that some students know, but not all students. One aspect about the DET that is kind of unique and interesting is that it is an adaptive test. So this means the difficulty of the questions that you receive is going to change based on your performance. So if you get a question right, you might receive a slightly more difficult question the next time. If you get a question wrong, you're going to receive a slightly less difficult question directly afterwards. And in this way, we're kind of able to go like this and certify your English proficiency more quickly, which is why the test can only be 1 hour long. Also, because of this, that every single test is virtually unique. There is no test that is the same as another test. Okay, I'm going to go into test questions here, and I'm so happy to see so many people in the chat. As a reminder, if you have a question for us to answer at the end, please use that Q&A because things get lost in the chat. How are DET questions different from other tests? You'll notice that DET questions are shorter than what you might be used to seeing on a more traditional English proficiency test or any standardized test. There are no long reading and writing passages. They're unique question types from all English subjects. And like I said before, you're going to receive those questions randomly. So there's not a set order of what you can expect to see on the Duolingo English test. You're going to have one long section where each type of question is going to come randomly. And again, we have a large pool of questions. We have a lot of questions to offer students, so that makes all of our tests an extremely unique experience. Each test is one of a kind. So here are some of the tasks that you're going to do on the DET. If you've taken the practice test, you're going to be familiar with a lot of these questions, and I'll try to give some of my tips as we move through them. This one is called the read and complete question. It's what you see here, which is a passage with words that have letters blanked out, and you're going to fill in those letters. One piece of advice I have for you on this one is that you will not be penalized more for a wrong answer than for no answer. So if you don't know, it's always better to try to guess. You're not going to get more points deducted for guessing than you will for leaving the blanks blank, if that makes sense. Another one we have is to identify real English words. This takes place two ways. The read and select question is where you read the words and select the ones that are real English words. And the listen and select is where you hear the words and make sure that you're selecting the ones that are real English words. My tip on this one, this is a challenging one for me, honestly, a native English speaker. It's to take your time on these and to make sure that you really know the words and trust your gut. If you've never seen the word before, but it looks convincing, that could just be a cleverly designed wrong answer. So make sure you really choose the words that you know to be true. Typing and speaking statements. So in listen and type, you're going to hear a statement and you'll write it out. And in read aloud, you're going to read the statement that is written on the screen. For these, again, I would say use your time limit here. You can actually replay that statement for listen and type up to 2 times. So if you don't quite hear it correctly on the first try, you can leave yourself time to listen to it again. This is a recent update to the test in 2022. It is called interactive reading. And this is a unique section on the test where most test questions on the DET, you have a time limit to answer one single question. In interactive reading, you're going to have a passage and there are 6 questions that you have to answer about the passage. And there's a full time limit for that section, for those 6 questions. So the time limit for interactive reading is either 7 minutes or 8 minutes, depending on how long the passage is. And you have that full time to move through the 6 questions. The questions ask you to do things like select the idea that is expressed in the passage, which you can see here, highlight the answer to a question about the passage. There's also some fill in the blank activity here where you can replace words in the sentences. and you'll also replace a blank sentence between two parts of the paragraph. One part about interactive reading that is really cool is that the passage is going to reveal more of itself as you move through those 6 questions. So you will have material that you've already read be present, and more new material is added for you to answer those questions about. So if you have questions about this newer section to the test, again, please use that Q&A. I see a lot of questions coming in there, and we will leave time to get to those. Another one, describing an image. This is write about a photo and speak about the photo. These, you're going to see an image on the screen, and you're going to write or speak at length about what you see in that image. For this one, my tip would be, again, write more than the minimum amount if you're able to keep it relevant to the photo and you're able to continue to use high level English. Please write as much as you can or speak as much as you can. That can really help you out. Some longer open response questions that we have are read then write, read then speak, and listen then speak. These are basically like mini essays or mini spoken responses where you're going to talk about kind of a broader topic and write out a longer answer than you have seen in previous questions that I showed you. So again, my advice for these would be to write as much as you can and do keep it relevant to the task. Another piece of advice I have for these is to try to answer them in the moment very authentically. Don't use phrases that you have memorized, even if it's your own writing. This can really affect your score because one of the scoring criteria is actually task relevance, which means how well are you answering that question. So again, try to really consider what the topic is and respond to it as specifically as you can while using all your language skills. And finally, the writing and speaking samples at the end of the test. So this screenshot is what a university is going to see when they receive your results. So they can actually watch this speaking sample and read your longer writing sample. These are 3 to 5 minute questions. They're the longest questions on the test. The writing sample is graded and scored, and the speaking sample is unscored. So for the writing sample, again, use all the high level English vocabulary and syntax and grammar that you can, and also really use your time wisely. I would take up to those 5 minutes, honestly, if I were taking the test and I had enough to say, that's what I would do. Okay, so I talked a little bit about how the questions are scored. All questions on the Duolingo English test are machine scored. We have created an AI-powered grading engine that was trained by experts in assessment science and English language proficiency and teaching. And that grading engine scores your responses. So they're trained on models of thousands of samples of English language. And here are some of the aspects that it evaluates. So here are things to pay attention to. And these are very technical terms, but I will define them for you as I move through. So grammatical accuracy. This means, is your grammar correct? Are you using punctuation correctly? Things like that, your basic grammar skills. Grammatical complexity. How complex is the grammar that you're using? How advanced is your English grammar? Lexical sophistication. That means your word choice. So how elevated, how high level are your words that you're using? If you've studied, English vocabulary, the highest level that you know, try to use as many of those high level words as you can. Lexical diversity, again, lexical means word choice. Diversity means how different is your word choice. So try to avoid repeating the same words over and over again. And again, use a wide variety of words that you know. Task relevance, I mentioned this one a few times. And again, this is really important for you guys to remember. This is evaluated, so you're going to need to address the question and the topic directly. So again, don't use any pre-prepared, kind of generalized, vague speech. Really try to talk about the topic at hand as much as you can. Fluency is about the amount and kind of the naturalness of the English language that you're able to produce in a given time. So that can be written or spoken. And finally, acoustic features. This is for speaking only, but it's things like your pace, your pronunciation, and we do have a wide variety of accents that we accept. Many people learn English with a British accent that is accepted on the DET, as well as British spelling. So these are some of the features to pay attention to. And I think these are kind of, fundamental ways to evaluate English language proficiency. So really show off your skills as best as you can, especially in those open response questions where these are going to matter. Rules and requirements, these are super important. And if you guys are getting ready to take the test, this is a really important part to pay attention. Do not, this goes without saying, but do not use another person's name or identification to take the test. Make sure you are using your own valid ID. This can be a reason for a decertified test or a banned account. So I think that's kind of an obvious one, but do make sure your ID photo is clear as well. That will not get your account banned, but it may be an obstacle to certifying your test. This one also is super important. You must be alone in a quiet, well-lit room. Again, I think this is kind of common sense, but some tips that I like to give test takers are make sure you've told your parents, your siblings, your roommates, your classmates if you're at school. No one can enter the room until you come out and you're finished taking the test, because that can really jeopardize your chances as well. Even if it's, you know, kind of an innocent interruption, it really is important to have complete privacy, because that can also result in a possible uncertified result. Your ears must be visible and uncovered, so no headphones, guys. We do have exceptions for religious head coverings. Like I said, no headphones, no AirPods, no earbuds. And make sure your camera and microphone are enabled, and make sure your face is visible. So you'll be able to test this during the setup. No outside materials are allowed. So put your phone in another room, put your Apple Watch in another room. Don't have any notes out, don't have anything distracting that you're even going to be tempted to look at during this. And you can also not take notes during the test. Do not use a second monitor. That can also interrupt kind of like our security protocols. So make sure you're just using your one monitor, whether it's your laptop or your desktop. Keep your eyes focused on screen. This is a really important one, and I think something that test takers struggle with. If you look down to type or you glance away a few times naturally, that's okay, but you do need to sort of pay attention and make sure that you're really focused on the screen, especially during things like speaking tasks where your hands are not doing anything. Make sure you're sort of staring directly into the camera or at the screen itself if you want to. I like to pretend I'm on a TV interview. That helps me kind of focus on that camera or the screen itself. Do not use any predictive text method. You guys would not believe the amount of people who use Grammarly or other extensions that are predictive text. Our security system does flag this immediately, and it definitely results in an uncertified test and probably some other issues for you as well. The reason for this is because a predictive text method is not measuring your English proficiency, right? It's measuring a software's English proficiency. So make sure you have those disabled. I know a lot of people use them for work and school, so make sure Grammarly is not enabled, or any similar predictive text methods. And you're going to take the test in a desktop app that you download from our website when you purchase the test, and make sure you're not exiting out of that app or navigating away for any reason. I also like to reboot my computer before I take the DET and make sure no other programs are running. Now, for my last part of this talk, I'm going to tell you about some of my favorite test readiness resources. One thing I always say about the DET, and that I'll tell you guys right now, the best way to improve your score on the DET, and the reason why I've invited Eve to be here with me today, is to improve your English proficiency and make sure you're practicing that English leading up to the test and you're really ready to show off all your best English proficiency skills. This is a test that is designed to do one thing, and that's measure your English proficiency. It is not designed to measure your knowledge of the test or your ability to memorize things. It is really about language. So make sure you're practicing language as much as possible. And here are some other resources that are going to show you what you can expect to see on the test, how you can expect to interact with it, etc. So the most popular by far is the free practice test. This is such a great resource, and we offer it for free on our website, and you can take it as many times as you want. So the practice test is a short version of the real test. It is 15 minutes long, and you're going to see all the question types that you will encounter on the real test on the practice test. Again, you can take it as many times as you want. Our item pool, our question pool is not as big for the practice test, so you might see some repeat questions, whereas on the real test, we have a much larger, huger pool of questions, so you won't expect to see the same questions again and again, if that makes sense. Another thing to keep in mind about the practice test is that this is not scored or proctored in the same way as the real test. So it's going to give you an estimated score range, but keep in mind, it is just that, an estimate. Your real test score will be more accurate. The official guide, this is my favorite resource. I worked on this a lot to create it. And it's a huge document with all the information that you would ever need about the Duolingo English test. So some things that it includes are some of the information that I shared with you in the upfront of this presentation, as well as things like a deep dive on every question type. It's going to break down what the question type is, how long you have to do it, some tips and tricks for interacting with that question. This guide also has all our rules and requirements listed out. It's got our test taking tips. It's got extra practice material that's not on the practice test. So again, this is absolutely free. All you need is a Duolingo English Test account, and you can access it on our website. And finally, I have to give a plug for YouTube. I make videos on Duolingo English Test YouTube channel, and I read all our comments over there too. So if you have a video request for me, please leave it in the comments on one of my YouTube videos, and I will try to make a video in response to that. Another really useful video that's on our YouTube page is what we call a walkthrough video. And it basically just shows a screen recording of somebody taking the test. And for visual learners, I think that's a really great way to get to know all the test questions. And that's all I have on DET's side. I see so many questions in the Q&A. That's awesome. And I'm going to pass it over to Eve for a while. So Eve, when you want to advance the slides, just let me know.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Again, my name is Eve Nora Litt, and my official job title is language specialist, which just means that I'm an English language instructor. And so I want to tell you a little bit about where I work, and then we'll talk a little bit more about how to be ready for the DET. So I teach at the University of Pennsylvania, and that's located in the beautiful and historically, culturally rich city of Philadelphia. We're one of the oldest colleges in the US, originally founded by Benjamin Franklin, as evidenced by the many, many references to his inventions and quotes spread across our campus. My specific department is English language programs, and we've been around since the 1960s, offering many types of programs to diverse audiences. But our flagship, our most important program, is called the intensive program, which runs all year round. It's 7 weeks with about 4 to 5 hours of class a day, and then activities throughout the week. And those activities could be trips to nearby cities like New York or DC, but we also have local activities like hiking in Fairmount Park, going to the Philadelphia Art Museum, or volunteering throughout the city. And so in addition to the intensive program, we have a few other types of programs like English for specific purposes. Those are geared more towards professionals or people interested in a specific topic of English, like business English. We're also known for the University Connection program, and this is a program that helps students specifically with academic English and helps them apply to universities. So that includes creating a list of schools to apply to, preparing for tests that a school might require, which could be maybe the SAT or the DET, and then helping students through the essay writing process. And then lastly, we have several remote programs that run throughout the year for students that do want to focus on their English, but they want to do it from anywhere in the world. Most of our programs require students to be organized into levels, kind of like beginning, intermediate, and advanced. And we use the Common European Framework to develop the curricular materials, but we use a modified Duolingo English test for our placement purposes, which means that when a student starts with us at ELP, they take a version of the DET and we use that information to make sure we're putting them in the right level. So that's how ELP first started working with Duolingo, and we're so happy for this partnership and to learn more about other uses of the DET. So again, thanks for having me here. I'm ready for that next slide. Awesome. So for this section, I just want to talk about the difference between test preparation and test readiness. So let's take a second to step back and think about the purposes of the DET, meaning why do people take this test? And like Caroline mentioned, a lot of people use standardized English tests for the university admissions process. So this kind of leads to the next question: why do colleges and universities require the test? The application process is already so complex with transcripts and essays and recommendations. Like, why add another requirement, right? Well, when colleges and universities see candidates that are qualified academically, right? They took the right courses, they have fantastic grades, and those candidates have activities that align with the college's values, like the plays that a student acted in, or the sports teams they were on, or the volunteer work they dedicated their time to. That college wants to make sure that that candidate can handle a life that's entirely in English, and that the language won't be a barrier for that student on campus. Colleges want to make sure that each student they accept is able to meet their goals of acquiring the knowledge they need to be successful in their future profession. So they use tests like the DET to ensure that candidates have a high level of English, and they can be participating in all sorts of campus events, from classrooms to social gatherings. And so a lot of my students at Penn are really stressed when it comes to that part of their application, the standardized English tests. And a lot of them sign up for these test-specific preparation courses, and they want to learn the right strategies to perform well on that particular test. And those preparation courses can be helpful, but they can also be really time-consuming and expensive. And if we go back to the original reason that universities use this test, it's to get an accurate understanding of one's language abilities, not to figure out how much time or money a student spent preparing for a test. So one of the reasons I really like DET is that the question types, the format, the mission really is to not have a test that one has to specifically study for. That's why this isn't test preparation. Learning English is the preparation, right? The preparation is the years and years you've already done. So there aren't specific grammatical structures or genres of writing or lists of vocabulary that's only relevant to the DET. Right? That shouldn't be the case. The question types are designed to assess language that you would use in many settings. So while this is not the type of test that one should prepare for in a specific way, there are ways to be ready, right? So what is test readiness? If it's not test preparation, what is test readiness? Being ready means knowing what to expect, not being thrown off by a type of question or a time restraint. Like, how distracting and stress-inducing can it be when you see like a timer countdown, right? So for the rest of my time with you here, I want to talk about two ways to be ready. One of the ways to be ready is to make sure you're all warmed up. Languages, like many other skills, are what we call use it or lose it. Use it or lose it means when a person is active with that skill, whether it's running or playing a piano or speaking English, they're quicker, more fluent when they're doing it more often. I studied Arabic many, many years ago. So if I were to take a test right now, I'd be really rusty. I'd be taking long pauses while thinking about the next word. So the first thing I'll talk about here is like the general English practice to make sure you're warmed up and ready to show your language abilities at your best. The second thing I'll talk about is a few ways you can be ready for the test. Again, it's not study this list of vocabulary. It's more what you can do to feel as comfortable as possible so you can shine on test day. So let's talk about general English practice. If we could go to that next slide, that would be great. All right. So again, with any skill, it takes time, but you've already done the preparation with your years of education. Here are a few things you can do to make sure you're warmed up. First, if you can, immerse yourself. I know that we're coming out of a global pandemic and travel is maybe harder than it was before, but intensive programs like ours are a great opportunity to focus on language learning. It's slightly more urgent to use and learn a language when you're living in a country where it's spoken, right? If you can't immerse yourself, find a group of people who you can regularly practice with you. Again, it's that frequency that will help with fluency. This could be over Zoom, face-to-face at a coffee shop. Even texting on WhatsApp regularly will increase writing fluency. Second, there are a few free resources that you can engage with online, and Caroline listed a few that are awesome, like the practice test and the DET YouTube channel. We also, I wanted to just give a quick shout out to Coursera. At ELP, we created 5 courses available on Coursera for free. And they're 5 because they're not just general English courses. They were designed to be around a topic of interest for our students. So we have like English for business, English for journalism, English for STEM, meaning science, engineering, technology, and math. So all of those courses on Coursera have hours and hours of free videos, readings, quizzes, games, discussion boards, assignments. So again, if you're looking for a little extra practice before the test, this might be a way to do it. And if you feel like those courses might be like too easy for you, then choose any of the 1,000 courses on Coursera that you're interested in, like fintech or art history, right? And then finally, I think you can get really creative with your listening and reading. Listening and reading are really important because that's how you're exposed to new structures or words. You don't only have to learn new words with like a textbook in a classroom, right? You can watch movies or TV shows in English, and maybe at first you'll have the subtitles on, but the second or third time you watch, turn those subtitles off. It's just critical to pick things you're interested in. If you find like Harry Potter engaging, there are a lot of sentence structures and sophisticated vocabulary that you can make part of your own language, right? Your own speech. Now with Harry Potter, maybe Muggle and Kidditch and Dementors like aren't the words that would be so helpful when taking a test like DET. But again, exposing yourself to narrative structure, like sequencing, what happened first, what happened next, or those vivid descriptions of places and events, those are transferable. So the idea of continuing your practice with content that interests you is really important. Learning doesn't only have to happen like with a teacher in front of you and a fill in the blank exercise. All right, so now that we've talked about like just general ways to make sure you're warmed up, let's talk about knowing what to expect, the readiness part. Tests are hard enough. And as Caroline mentioned, this is adaptive, right? So the more questions you answer correctly, you're rewarded by more difficult questions. So the only way to know what's going to happen is to become familiar with the test format and the question types. And one of your best tools is that 15-minute practice test. Here are a few other examples of some self-study to be ready for the DET. Consider the question types. So Caroline mentioned the listen, then write, and that's a type of question that asks you as the test taker to type the statement you hear. In other words, it's a transcription. This is something you can practice with podcasts, television shows, TV news, videos on YouTube. Play a sentence and then try and type it out. You can use closed captionings or the transcript to check your work, right? So that's a really everyday tool that you can practice on your own. Another type of question, that read aloud, again, it asks the test taker to read a sentence that's on the screen. Well, one way to check your pronunciation with this is to use your phone's voice to text function, right? Most smartphones have this feature where you can choose a language and then speak into your phone. If the phone is able to type out what you said, then you know your pronunciation, at least at the sound level, is solid, right? If your phone is having trouble identifying the words that you're saying, then you know which sounds that you need to practice more. So those are just a few types of, for specific questions. Another one, I know Caroline talked about describe a picture, right? Whether that's a speaking question or a writing question. Pictures are everywhere. Social media, your house, the internet, museums, newspapers, literally everywhere. So just building that familiarity with that question type, being asked to describe something you see, will make you more comfortable when you're asked to do it on the exam, and it's relevant to your life as an English speaker. Additionally, it's good to practice the timing of these types of questions. You know, I don't know about you, but when I see that timer start to click down, it gives me a little bit of anxiety, and that can be distracting in the moment. And so some of the questions will give you a range, like a minimum response time and a maximum response time. It's a good idea to aim for that longer response. Let's consider that task again, describe a picture. When you're speaking, it says at least 30 seconds, but it can be as long as 90 seconds. Shoot for that 90 seconds. It's not that speaking more is definitely better, but you want to use every opportunity to show your language skills. So if you're getting ready for the test, practice 90 seconds, because in that test situation, 90 seconds can sometimes feel like surprisingly long, and sometimes 90 seconds can be really, really short, and you just don't want to be surprised on test day. So take a look at the readiness guide, understand the timing, and practice or speak for that amount of time when you're getting ready for the test. And remember, shoot for those longer responses. And then finally, if you want specific information on question types, the resource guide, the DET YouTube channel, and also Penn ELP created totally free YouTube series that offers videos with practice on the question types. There are 11 videos total, and each video is like between 5 and 10 minutes. So there are some resources out there to help you get ready for that test. All right, so thank you for listening. Thank you for inviting me. Remember, you're prepared just by studying English. That was the real work. Now it's time to just get ready, right? All right.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Eve. That was so great. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing our presentation screen now, and we will look at all these wonderful questions that you have left for us in the Q&A. There are a lot of similar questions, so I'll go through and try to get through as many as I can here, and hopefully I'll answer what everybody asked. Okay, the first question we got was, is the test accepted for academic purpose, specifically UK universities? So again, one of the main reasons people take the DET is for university admission. If your university accepts the DET as proof of English language proficiency, it's going to be listed on their website, and their school name will also be in our institution's page. So it's kind of up to you to do your homework there and check those requirements and make sure it satisfies. But the short answer is yes, there are many universities in the UK that do accept the DET. And again, we're working on growing every day. Next one, DET has a fee waiver. Who is eligible to get it? There are a few ways you can get a fee waiver for the DET. One is through an organization that helps support students and that we work with through our Access program. We have actually many partners around the world who help support students who need fee waivers. These could be things like Syrian Youth Empowerment, organizations like that that are created to sort of support and help students. So if you have any organizations like that in your country that can help you out with things like fee waivers, I highly recommend reaching out to them. Unfortunately, we as the DET cannot give out individual fee waivers to students, so you'll have to go through that channel, or sometimes universities do have fee waivers for students. So I know a lot of our university partners are interested in supporting people who need help paying for the test. So you can reach out to a university admissions office and ask if they have any fee waivers. Omar asks a great general question. How can I prep for the DET? I hope that we answered this in our slides. Anna Sophia asks if you need to show the room at the beginning of the test. You do not need to show the room. But again, just make sure your face is clearly visible, that you're kind of at level with your camera like I am right now and like Eve is right now, and make sure that there is not any person in the room or other distracting elements. How long is the score available to show to a university? 2 years? Yes, the validity of the test is 2 years from the time you get your certified results. Are the questions in the practice test the same as in the real one? No, they are not. So all of our practice test questions are similar to what you're going to see on the real test, but like I said, we have a smaller pool of questions for the practice test, and you will never see a practice test question on the real test. Sorry, I'm moving through these quickly. I just want to make sure we get to all of them. Nancy asks a great question, which I'm going to give to Eve. She mentioned some of these resources earlier. Nancy says, I've exhausted the Duolingo website instructional materials and on other websites. Are there any ideas for other resources and practice tests and practice exercises?
Specifically for DET, I mean, there are like a lot of great YouTube channels. There are many resources out there for sure. But I don't necessarily think this has to be DET specific. Again, it's really the English language study that's going to be your best preparation. So choosing those things you're interested in. I saw somebody mention in the chat while I was talking about TED. Yeah, TED has some great interactive lessons that you can choose also that might quiz you afterwards about like a listening comprehension or a key term. And those are great resources too. So it's really it's all about practicing your English and not necessarily just the DET. It sounds like you're ready, right? You've exhausted those practice tests and the resource guide, so you know what to expect. It's now just warming up and practicing your English.
Thanks, Eve. Great answer. Someone asked if I didn't get the score I needed, after how long can I redo the test? Is there a time limit between two tests? This is a great question. The current policy of the Duolingo English Test is that you can take 3 tests in 30 days. So whether or not your test is certified or uncertified within a 30-day period, so from the time you take the first test, you have a 3-test limit. Hope that helps. If you have additional questions about that, our support team can definitely help you out. Okay, Laura asked a question about the interactive reading passages, which I think is a good question. If the first answer is incorrect, does it affect the other answers? This is a great question because some of the first answers that you're going to encounter on the interactive reading passages are those fill in the blank answers. So we call these complete the sentences and complete the passages. So when you first encounter the passage, it's going to have a few sentences with words that are fill in the blank. If you do get those wrong, they will be revealed as you advance through the interactive reading section. So again, you have to do this in order. You can't go back to previous questions because the answer is going to be revealed. I think my piece of advice here would be don't get flustered if you got 1 or 2 answers wrong here. Just keep moving through and do your best. Maybe you're stronger in a different task, but no, it will not affect the rest of your performance there, because the second question that you're going to see is a complete the passages question. And this is where you have to fill in the blank of a sentence that connects 2 passages. And again, once you move through that answer, you will see the correct answer revealed. So this is actually one of the only times on the DET that you'll know if you got something right or wrong right away. But in general, for answering things wrong or guessing, my advice is always don't stress because of the test is adaptive. It will all even out in the end, and you'll get your English proficiency accurately at the end of the test. And like I said earlier too, there's always a reason to guess. You're not penalized for a wrong answer more than you are for no answer, which is a question that is asked next, which is, will wrong answers get negative points, filling in gaps and real words? The answer to this is that the questions that have, let's call it an objectively right answer. So for example, the fill in the gaps and real words, those do have, again, like a right answer that your answer is compared to. That said, you're going to get partial credit for as much of the answer as you got right. So in all those questions, if you think about it, it's not just one word or one option that you're selecting. It's a lot of words and a lot of options. So again, I think it's not necessarily a 0 points or a -1 point situation. It's about getting as much credit as you possibly can. Someone asked if practice on Duolingo test so I can get a high score. Is practice on Duolingo enough? I think this is referring to the Duolingo app. And I will say that the Duolingo app is an awesome resource to learn a new language. But for the level of English proficiency that you would need, for example, going to university, I would suggest much more using some of the resources that Eve recommended that are like what we would call native texts. So, TV shows, movies, books, TED Talks, podcasts. You're going to get a lot more language there, and that's going to help you prepare to give these extended responses. So love Duolingo app. Please use it. It's awesome. I use it to learn French and Italian, but I would recommend for the DET and also just preparing yourself to go to university using longer native texts as preparation. Okay, I wonder if Eve has an answer to this question. Do you have any strategy for how we can easily complete the missing letter part?
Gosh, spelling in English is really, really tricky. And I struggle with that as a native speaker. So I understand why that's can be one of the trickier question types. The answer, I mean, really is the more you read and the more you write, the more comfortable you get with and familiar you become with spelling patterns that you can use. And so that is really the only way to kind of get stronger in that area of your language development is going to be to read more and to write more. These are things that, if you have a friend that's also wanting to take the DET and you have a newspaper and you want to use whiteout to like take out some letters. I mean, that could be, maybe I'm a nerd, but that could be a really fun afternoon activity to get ready for that type of question.
Awesome. I think that's a great answer. Okay, why does the practice test generate overall score but not subsection scores? So again, keep in mind that the practice test is very short. It's about a fourth the length of the regular test. And we're not able to offer as many resources to evaluate your responses on the practice test as we do on the certified test. We've got to make sure that our certified tests are all in shipshape and getting all our best resources. So again, any scores you receive from the practice test, I'd consider those an estimate. And again, I think this is just driving home the point that Eve and I are making, which is that try not to worry too much about the test itself. Try to worry more about your English practice and your English proficiency. I think that's the best way to improve your score. Okay, I love this one, and I'm also going to toss this one to Eve. How do you properly explain an idea while talking about a certain topic, but still maintaining your cool and objectivity?
Wow, what a great question.
It is a great question.
I mean,
Hard in any language, I would say.
Test situations are stressful, right? I think maintaining your cool, I'm not sure if DET is really ever looking for objectivity as far as explaining an idea, but as far as maintaining your cool, it is a good idea to make sure. One thing I notice about pronunciation is that when a person is nervous, they tend to speed up. And when people talk fast, sometimes people think, oh, that's great. I'm speaking quickly. And that really shows that I'm really proficient in my language use. But unfortunately, sometimes when we talk fast, we start to lose pronunciation features that are actually really important when we're trying to make a point or show that we're passionate about something, or when we tell a story, right? So when we have things like stress, when we make a word louder or longer, or pausing between what we call like grammatical units, where you would see a comma in writing, that's where we pause when we're speaking, right? Or intonation, having our voice raised when we are not done talking, so the listener knows that my idea is not finished yet, right? So when we go up, I'm not done. When I go down, I'm done. Those things are really important in speaking tasks and in communication in general. And so as far as when we lose our cool and we start to speed up, we lose those aspects of language. So I would highly encourage you to kind of practice speaking with an intention of intonation, stress, and pausing, and understand that when you're speaking quicker, it's not necessarily better and will result in a higher score.
Awesome. Thanks, Eve. I think that's great advice. My advice that I always give test takers, which is kind of, it's nothing groundbreaking, but I always say, don't get flustered when you mess up. Just keep going, just like you would in normal speech, just like Eve and I have both done in this presentation. If we say something, the wrong way, we just go back and correct it. And then we move forward to continue talking. So that's the piece of advice that I would give. Again, ways to practice, speaking and writing fluidly are great preparation for this test. Daniel also asks, can the results of some tests be reviewed by real human beings when presented to a university? So I think this is a great question. One is that all tests are going to be seen by multiple human proctors. So multiple people are going to watch the video recording of every single test. And that is for security and certification purposes. So there's already humans reviewing before it gets to universities. Just everybody keep that in mind. Additionally, once you do send it to the university, they are going to be able to watch that video of you. So an admissions professional is able to watch your speaking sample. And again, even though this is an unscored question, it's really important to show off all your skills here because they can watch that. And a lot of universities do use that video sample to get to know you and your English proficiency skills a little bit better. Okay. This question says, where can I find Cepher Checker to practice my writing level? And my production score is the lowest so far, which is a common question I get from test takers. I'm going to ask Eve if she has an answer to this one.
It's, I don't know of many online resources that like score writing samples. That's hard for me to say. I would definitely say talk to an instructor, and they can kind of point you in what things to focus on next in your language development.
That's a great answer. I think I wanted to also ask you about the second part of the question, which is we get many students asking, how can I improve my production score? So production is producing language. So that's writing and speaking for those of you who are watching and don't know exactly what that means. It's one of our 4 sub-scores, and our sub-scores are different than other tests because they are what we call integrated modalities, which basically just means combined skills. So for example, right now, Eve and I are using all 4 of our skills. We're reading and we're writing and we're speaking and we're listening. So that's why that's a more natural way to use English and why we have those combined subscores. But wanted to ask Eve if she had any tips on practicing productions or writing and speech.
I mean, it's not going to maybe be a satisfying response, but again, it's like the more you speak, the more accessible new words are that you've learned. They're kind of like fresh in your brain, and you can access them quicker if you're practicing them more frequently. And the same thing with writing. You know, I can't wake up tomorrow and decide I want to run a 6-minute mile. Unfortunately, it will probably take me many months to be that fast, maybe never at all. But it is something that I would actually have to have a training plan in place for. And it's the same thing with speaking and writing in a second language. It's that practice that's really going to make you quicker.
Awesome. Thanks, Eve. A lot of questions about this looking away rule that we have. And I want to give some context that the reason we have this rule is because we can't see your test center, right? Your test center is your laptop or your computer that you're using. And so we need to make sure there's not something, you know, here or here or here that I'm looking at to use, you know, prepared responses or anything of that nature. So that's why it's really important. And I know it's frustrating for a lot of you, especially people who tend to have, you know, more flighty eye contact or tend to look down more. And like I said, I think basically looking down once in a while to type is okay, especially on more writing heavy tasks. But I actually think another good test taking tip is to read your writing as you're writing it. So, you know, once you've written a couple sentences, go back and reread those. And that's going to help you to be really focused on the screen naturally. But yeah, I totally get that this could be challenging for certain test takers. And I think another piece of advice that I give is, you know, practice it. Practice this like a skill. Like when you take the practice test, try as much as you can to just have your eyes kind of centered on the screen. This is a good question. My Mac has a type ahead screen in the keyboard. Is there a problem with that? The answer is yes. Do not use that. It is considered a predictive text method, just like Grammarly. So do your best not to look at it. Definitely don't select any of those options. Luckily, the Mac keyboard usually offers like very short words like and we and the, but in general, yes, don't use that. It is considered to be a predictive text method. All right, I heard we need to put a mirror behind us or it is preferred. Can you tell us about this one? I will say that it is not a requirement for the test. You do not need to have a mirror. If you don't have one in your testing space, please don't worry that your test is going to be uncertified. That said, I think the proctors and the support team do like it because they're able to see your testing environment better and it helps them more quickly ascertain that you're obeying all the rules and whatnot. So if you have one, I say go for it. It can't hurt. How could I turn off Grammarly or Google predictive text before I start the test? So you're going to take the test in the DET app, which is not actually in a web browser. It's a desktop app that you have to download. So that's going to help with things like browser predictive text or any extensions that you might have on your browser. That said, if you're running a program that operates in all your apps on your computer, you're going to need to look up how to disable that program before you start taking the test. If you have specific questions, our support team is awesome about stuff like this, and there's no reason to not reach out to the support team before taking the test. They're not only for after the test. So you can ask them about your specific kind of operating system in your program and make sure that you are ready to go. Nancy asks, so from the practice test score, how does the student know what sections they need to improve on? I would say, again, I'm a little bit of a broken record here, but again, focusing on like the test itself and sort of sections of the test is not as effective as just focusing on improving your English skills. So I think questions that feel harder for you, practice those skills more. Honestly, speaking is the one that we hear the most, and that makes sense. Eve, I'm not sure if this is correct from like an English language professional perspective, but I think it's the hardest. It's the hardest for me personally when I'm learning a foreign language. So it makes sense that a lot of people might need to improve or get a better score on speaking related subscores. But I would say kind of just use what you know about yourself and your English and work on improving your proficiency in that area. Sorry that we're moving quickly, you guys. There's a lot of questions here. Eve, did you have something to build on that?
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to speaking, it's so interesting because I'm definitely I'm a type of language learner that is hesitant to say something unless I formed it in my head and I know I don't have any mistakes. And in a test situation, that really works against me because often tests, and I can't speak to the DET because I don't peer behind the curtain on the scoring part, but in other test situations, candidates are favored who take risks, who say more, who are using more complex structures. So if you're the type of test taker like me, where I'm trying to keep it safe and trying to say things that I know are accurate, in many other situations that can kind of like work against me because I should really be saying more and taking more risks.
I love that advice. And I think it is also true for the DET. Can universities see the results of practice tests? They cannot, you guys. Practice away. There is no one seeing your scores on those. Okay. Wow, there's so many questions. I'm so sorry that we are not getting to all of them. A lot of questions about, is the DET accepted in other countries other than the US? Yes, my friends, it's global. We've got lots of institutions in lots of countries, and we are working really hard right now on building those relationships and educating worldwide universities about the DET. We've got people now who are working on the ground in the UK and also in Australia on behalf of the DET, and that's really exciting for us. But thank you for asking. Okay, I'm just going to see if I can find a good question to end on. Oh, this is a good question. If you run out of time before pressing the button send answer, will it be sent and evaluated automatically? Yes, if you are speaking and you speak until the 0 seconds, your answer will be recorded and submitted automatically. If you're done with your response, that's when you can press that next button to submit your response. Okay, I'm just scanning. You guys, thank you so much for joining. I really hope this was helpful for everybody. I think we got to a lot of these questions, but not all. I would say for any kind of very DET specific questions, you can direct those to our support team. They'd be happy to help you. Eve, thank you so much for joining us. I love learning things from you. It definitely helps me with understanding the test taker's perspective as well. And yeah, we wish you guys the best of luck on the test. Don't forget to check out Eve's videos on Penn ELP's YouTube channel and the other resources she mentioned in this presentation, which once I put this recording on YouTube, I will link in the description. And thank you guys for being a really positive crowd. This was awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. I love learning about the updates.
Awesome. Okay, we'll see you guys next time. Good luck on the test. We believe in you, and go do your best. Bye.